Hey, welcome to Keight Krafts. I'm Keight. Today I would like to share with you part 2 of recreating some Happy Mail. Let's get started. So to kick things off, this is the card that I will be recreating today. If you haven't watched my last video where I do a little bit of an unboxing, I'll leave a link in the description box below so you can check that out after. So to start off, we are going to be using the Rainy Sky Stencil by Fawn, as well as some weathered wood. In the original card that my niece made, she did some gray raindrops on a blue background, or an ink blended background. So to prevent everything from smearing, we are going to encase that gray weathered wood in with some clear embossing powder that has a bit of a sparkle. So once I've thoroughly coated all of that on there, I'm going to dump this back into the jar because I don't trust myself. And then we are going to pull out our trusty little heat tool here, and we are going to set that embossing powder so that everything stays put and we can ink blend over top of it. So once that is all taken care of, we are going to go in with some Tumble Glass and some Mermaid Lagoon. Now, I'm assuming that she probably used some dye-based ink, but at the time of this recording, I didn't really have anything that would have matched it. So I figured I would go in with some Distress Oxide so I could get a bit of a gradient, as I'm not too strong suited in ink blending with dye inks yet. Though I have been pushing myself out of my boundaries to try and maybe get a better hand at it, but I find that I do like the way Distress Oxides blend better. Or at least that's my experience. So next up we have some Lucky Clover, and we are going to be using some Evergreen Bough. And I'm just going back and forth between the two colors just to give myself a bit of a gradient again. Now I ended up going to cut the top of this out with a grassy grassy border die, I think it was, and I didn't like how it turned out, so I didn't end up using it that way. And next up, we are going to be doing a little bit of Copic coloring, and if you need all of the colors, I will make sure to have them all in the description box below, as I usually do, in case you're wondering what I'm using and you don't have a chance to write everything down. I struggled with this one. I wasn't exactly sure how I was going to do this, as I've never really colored a critter in a rainbow sort of way. I assume that if it was a bigger, like a bigger surface area to color on, I probably could have gotten a better gradient, but given the fact that everything was kind of smooshed into the bottom, I give my niece props for thinking outside of the box, because I would have never thought to color a rainbow elephant before. So this was quite the challenge to try and put this together and, you know, put it together in some sort of cohesive order, because I was kind of all over the place as I was coloring this. So I'm just going to go back and forth with two colors here to create some sort of rainbow effect. You'll have to forgive me, I should have had all these mapped out ahead of time, but at this point of the game, it was kind of like, I don't know what I'm doing. So I'm just gonna, this is probably the worst I've winged something, because yeah, this was a challenge. I don't know, have you guys ever sat down and tried to recreate a card that a friend has sent you? If you have, I'd like to know how you made out in the comments below, or is this something that you would consider doing if somebody sent you something and been like, here, try to recreate this in the best way that you think you can? I mean, it certainly is a challenge, especially if you don't have everything that that person had used to create the card itself, and you kind of, well, anyway, with me going through my stash and thinking, oh, I could probably use this and I could use this, and then, like I did with the mermaid card, and I had that stencil that I'd used, and it was like, oh, I have a smaller stencil I could use, so I don't know, it was neat. And oh, and she ended up having a lot of glitter all over the place, so I'm going to substitute the glitter that she used with some Wink of Stella on the little head and the sun. So once that's all done, I am going to cut out my flower border. And this little flower border is the straight flower border die. It's a couple years old, I want to say, and I've gotten some use out of it. It's quite a nice little little die because you could cut off however many you need, and you have your base that you can cut out of whatever color you want, and then add your little flowers to the top. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to color these guys in. So I'll leave them still attached so I don't get marker all over the place. And we are just going to add a little bit of the YG09 to give myself some green little foliage at the bottom of the flowers here. And then because I don't have the color that I would like to use for this, I'm going to take some of this Recollections brand shimmer cardstock and I'm going to go over it with some alcohol marker. Now I don't want to do this too heavy-handedly because it will make the paper soggy, and I'm impatient for waiting for it to dry. And once I've done that, I've gone ahead and cut everything out off camera, so that way I can take those little yellow bits right there and I'll be able to glue them on the back side. Now I ended up using this same die for another card that I have coming up on my channel. And one of the things that I found that is when cutting out the base to glue everything onto, I think in the future I will try to remember to use a thicker cardstock if it is freestanding. Now I end up gluing this onto the card itself, but to have this freestanding, I think I would recommend using like a 100-pound cardstock or something like that, because the little foliage leaves there for the flowers, they're kind of thin. And when you're gluing a lot onto them, they get a little bendy, which I didn't really like. So I think in the future, if I make this, I will try to remember that if I'm gluing it down onto a card, that I can get away with any kind of paper, but if I'm going to be using it freestanding, to use a thicker cardstock for the base. Just something that I found out, and that's a later video, so if you haven't subscribed yet, you don't want to miss that one, because I had a huge struggle with an upcoming card that I ended up having to make twice because I just couldn't wrap my mind around how I wanted to put it together, because that's usually how it goes sometimes. I tend to put off certain cards because they're such a challenge, and then when I finally get the courage to do it, I'm still rather intimidated by it. I don't know, do you guys get intimidated by certain cards or interactive cards? I know I do, and there's some that I have not even bothered to try yet. So here I've got some Sakura Stardust Jelly Roll pen, and I'm just going around with some dots. Like I said before, she uses a lot of glitter, and instead of gluing glitter down, I'm just going to add a little bit of glitter with some glitter pens, just to give it a little bit of interest. And I really like this border die. I think it's fabulous for spring cards and just to get the warmer weather vibes out there. At the time of this recording, it is really, really cold. Looking at the weather right now, it is, let's see here. At the time of this recording, it is minus 14 Celsius, but feels like minus 25. And for my American viewers, that is 7 degrees and feels like minus 13 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's a little chilly today. So once I've gone ahead and glued that down onto my base, I'm very, 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 very carefully going to trim this down the best that I can to about 5.5. So that way it spans around across the length of the card, because we are going to do a landscape card. So I'm just using my little pokey tool to move the flower out of the way. I know you can't see it because it's off camera, but I don't want to trim off the little leaves or the petals of the flowers because I would like to leave them intact. I mean, you could do this with a pair of scissors. I don't always choose the smartest route when making a card, so you'll have to bear with me here. I know it's a little out of focus, but once we've got all that done, we'll be able to glue that down onto our card base. So thinking of gluing it down, I think instead of gluing it directly down to the card base, I'm going to add a little bit of dimension, and we are going to cut a whole bunch of little pieces of a double-sided foam tape, and that way we could prop it up and, give it a little bit of depth, because these flowers are just too stinking cute if you ask me. So please bear with me while I cut a few of these down, that way I have enough to go around. And then once I've got that all done, I'll be able to peel off all of the backing and the release tape, and I'll be able to put that all down. But I wanted to make sure that I put some extra little bits here on the umbrella itself, because it's going to be within the same length, or not length, the same height as the flowers themselves. That way it just gives that elephant a little bit more, I don't know, cuteness. So I'm going to measure that out and where I need to have them to be, and I'm going to add a little bit of glue to the back side of it, grab my tweezers, and then give myself a little bit of wiggle room there and push that guy down. So once I've got them all tapped down there, we are going to pull off the release tape to the little umbrella, add a little bit of glue just for some extra stick, use my reverse tweezers, and he's going to hold on to that cute little umbrella. So next we're going to peel off all of the backing of the release tape of the foam tape, if you know what I mean. And we're going to add some double stick here, so that way we've got a slightly little bit of a wiggle room, and then we're going to mash that down the best that we can. So I'm going to make sure that that's even with both sides. Oh, no, we're going to add a little bit more glue because I gone ahead and misplaced it. So once that's all stuck down, all we have to do is stick on our sun. So we're going to glue that one down straight. We're not going to add any foam tape because that's going to be a bit in the background, and that'll cover her sun because she used glitter for hers, and I'm just going to use that one. So next we're going to add a bunch of glue to the card base. Make sure that we're going to glue this down correctly, and we'll line that up and give that a good mash. And here you can see my finished card next to hers. Hers is on the right and mine is on the left. I thought this was a lot of fun. As you can see, she uses glitter here, and I replaced the glitter with some Stella, some Sakura, and some splatter. So you can see right there and around the head, and I had a lot of fun doing this, and I really hope you enjoyed today's content. If you did, give it a like, don't forget to subscribe, and as always, thanks for hanging out with me today. Take care.